back, guys. So I guess you liked the last video. It did about 10 times as well as my previous video. So shout out to Nick Schuler for that. And shout out to him again. He had another comment in the last video suggesting I do a secret jazz chord voicing lesson related to the blues. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to discuss 5 different levels of building up your jazz blues playing. So we're going to start from pretty standard, I wouldn't say basic, but standard jazz chords, jazz voicings using this secret jazz chord idea. And we're going to get to some different concepts, substitutions, and really build it so by the end of it, it's a very, you could say complex, but expert level type of jazz blues playing. Again, we're going to do this just like the last invitation video, and we're going to go through it in these 5 levels. Because you guys were so supportive of the last video and PDF, this is a free PDF download, so you guys can check that out below. Again, welcome to all the new subscribers and everyone who shared the video and liked it and commented. Keep commenting because I do take your suggestions seriously, as you can see from these last couple of videos, and we'll get into the video. So our standard blues form, I won't go through the kind of basic level of the blues, discussing how to get to a jazz blues. So this is assuming some sort of knowledge of a blues form. If you have questions about that, I can definitely do another video that is just bringing you up from a basic blues to a more advanced blues. But let's just go through some of these basic voicings and you can follow along with the PDF. So first off, we're dealing with an F blues. So we're going to look at this secret jazz chord voicing. And for a lot of these, this is using the 13th as my top note. I'm adding in the root there so you can hear it more as a blues. So this is F13 like that. And then we go to our 4 chord, which is B flat 13, back to F13. And then here, sometimes you'll see it as a 2-5, like C minor to F7 or F altered to B flat. We're just going to take out that C minor and just play the F altered. For our secret jazz chord voicing with the altered sound, we use the sharp 9 instead of the 13. So this is F altered, and it slides really nicely into the next chord, the B flat 13. That's why that works so well. After B flat 13 on the second line of the blues, this is usually where you might see a diminished chord, so B diminished. And the next level, we're going to look at some substitutions for these diminished chords, so definitely stick around for that. There's a lot we can do on this chord, so we're not always stuck with diminished. After that, we go back to our F13, and then we go to our 6th dominant chord, setting up for our last 4 measures, which is D altered. Again, for altered, we use the sharp 9, so if this is D altered, our sharp 9 is the F. And then we go to our last line of the blues, which is G minor. Again, you could use a Dorian here, but for the sake of practicing our secret jazz chord, I'm going to approach this as melodic minor. So we're taking the 9th of our chord, so G minor, we're looking at the A. You could also think about this as just C13, so G minor. And then from here, we're going to our C altered, using that voicing, thinking about that E flat as our secret jazz chord note, and then going back to F altered. And then the last chord as our turnaround at this kind of basic level, standard level, we just hit a 5 chord, 5 altered, so C7 altered. So that's our first initial setup for the blues. That's going to be our basis for the blues. And now we're going to start making changes. So that's level 1. For level 2, I want to look at some options we have for this diminished chord. So this is that 6th measure of the blues. In this key, we're dealing with B diminished. Now, one thing you can think about is, instead of thinking about it like a diminished chord, we could think about it like a dominant chord. And the way I prefer thinking about it, just translate it into a dominant chord, is whatever this root is, in this case B, I just think about that is my 3rd of what dominant chord. So B is the 3rd of G7. And then we can use an altered chord for that. So in this case, like G altered. So on that second line, we're dealing with B flat 13. Instead of going to B diminished, I can deal with G altered, this voicing, using B flat as the top note, and then going to F7. And now you might be asking, okay, well, why does G altered resolve to F13 here? And the trick that you can use is not thinking about it as F13, but thinking about it like C minor. If I put a C in the bass here and keep the same voicing, we get a C minor 6/9 voicing, and we know that G altered as a 5 goes to C. So that's what's working here. That's why G altered sounds like it works going into that chord. So that's a switch we can make at the second level, is thinking about a substitution for this diminished. For level 3, we're going to look at some tritone substitutions. Now, if you've checked out a lot of YouTube videos, you're probably familiar with tritone subs, and they're actually a little bit more advanced than you might initially think. They can give you some really cool sounds. So we're going to look at a few spots that we can do some tritone subs on this F blues progression. The first one is in that measure 4, where before we had F altered. We had F altered going into B flat 13. Instead of doing that as F altered, we can think about it. It's still the same secret jazz chord voicing. I'm going to switch the position of it so that I can get the bass note. The tritone substitution means that we take our root. So instead of F altered, we move the F note up or down a tritone. It's the same either way, which takes us to B. So instead of F altered, we get B13. Another way of thinking about this is it switches a 5-1 relationship, F to B flat, to a chromatic relationship, B to B flat. So that's really what the tritone substitution does, is it switches a 5-1 relationship to a chromatic relationship. So that's a really cool one to throw in. Another one we can do, looking at measure 6 of the blues, we just had G altered. If I throw the tritone sub of this, instead of G, we would get D flat. And that's another really cool chord on that 6 measure. So we'd have B flat 13, D flat 13, and then F 13. And then again here, instead of D altered, tritone sub of D is A flat, so we switch to A flat 13. A flat 13 could go into G minor, and then instead of C altered, we do a tritone sub of that, and we get F sharp altered, resolving to F13. This is kind of a dark way of playing F13, but you get this really nice chromatic motion. From that part, we'd have A flat 13, G minor 9, keeping the same voicing but changing the bass note, and then F13. So that's tritone subs. That's what I would think about as level 3. And remember, you don't have to do all of these options in one chorus. They're just giving you options so that when you're playing through blues, you're not feeling like you're playing the same thing every chorus. You have options, and you should be able to play 30 to 50 courses of a blues without repeating yourself and allowing yourself to respond to what the soloist is doing, whether they're playing over those tritone subs or they're playing it diminished or whatever. These giving you those options. That's the way to think about this. Not like expert level is playing all of these at the same time. They're picking from these options. So we're giving you more tools in the toolkit, and then it's really up to you as the musician to pick which of those options are appropriate. Next up, we're looking at level 4. So level 4, we're dealing with what I call melodic voice leading. So let's look at that. For most of these secret jazz chord voicings, we have this extra note we can reach, and it's a whole step away from wherever we're playing. So if we're playing this secret jazz chord voicing for F13, we also have, if we take our pinky off, the note C. So we have, and with that we can create little melodies, going from that to this, or from D down to C. And that's true for basically all of these voicings we have. And that gives us a really good way of creating some more interest in our comping. We don't want to just be playing specific chords and harmony. We want our melody of our chord to even relate to what the soloist is doing or create its own sort of counter melody. And that's why it starts to get more advanced, because you're doing that in addition to thinking about the harmony in response to the soloist, and then there starts to be a lot going on. So you have to be very comfortable with the chords to get to that level. So again, I have that listed out in the PDF. What we get to on this 5th and 6th measure is this idea with minor thirds, is you can go from that voicing and move smooth that whole voicing up a minor third, keeping the melody going. This is taken straight off of Joe Pass. That's actually where the secret jazz chord voicing is coming originally. I learned it from my teacher, Barry Green, and he was influenced by Joe Pass on that. I know from my brother as well, who's a piano player, that it's a voicing that's used a lot in piano. So we want to use that in the idiomatic way with those melodies. The last one I want to talk about at this level is our turnaround. So we can end on that F13, and now what we can do as substitutions is, instead of doing a kind of classic turnaround of like a 1, 6, 2, 5, 1, we can do tritone subs like what we're taking from before and add in this little melody. So what we're doing, it's like F13, A flat 13, which is a tritone sub of D, G with the same voicing, G flat, which is a tritone sub of C altered, and then we would resolve back at the top with F13. Now, level 5 is a cool way to use this secret jazz chord for vamps. And the way that I learned it from my teacher, Barry Green, is using this as the sus flat 9. So for the sus 7 flat 9 voicing, we play our secret jazz chord voicing off the root. So instead of F at the beginning, instead of that F13, for those first 3 measures, we're going to play this sus flat 9. You can basically alternate from the bass and the chord. It's a dark sound. It is really cool at a climax point of your solo, or if the band's really getting into it. It has a more modern sound, obviously, than a traditional blues sound, but it's a really nice sound if you're like want kind of a dark energy to that part of your solo. And then the way we get out of it is on that 4th measure of the blues, we switch to F altered, and then that would go back to B flat 13. So it's a way of using the vamp, that sus flat 9, as a vamp. So that's the 5 levels. Again, thank you guys for supporting the last video. I really appreciate it. Whatever you guys did as far as liking, commenting, and sharing it with your friends really worked. We have, like I said, 10 times the views and watch time on that last video. So hopefully you guys like this one as much. And if you have any suggestions, please put it in the comments. Maybe your suggestion will be my next video. So thanks. I'll see you in the next one.